So Grant Nelson, huh? All right. So how important is it to get him on campus to play for Arkansas? Pretty important, I'd say.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I'm also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. And when you enter in promo code LOCKEDONCollege, they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday. As you probably know, I did not have a podcast yesterday. I'm battling this congestion stuff, man. It sucks. And I even tried to record it yesterday and was not successful at all. Like, I just couldn't even get through without coughing and sounded like I was hocking up a lung. So hopefully we can get through this one. We'll see. We'll play it by ear, but just bear with me on it because it's really annoying, and you don't realize how much you need your voice until you don't have it when you do it for a living. So, but we'll try to make it through here today on the podcast with plenty of things to get to, especially on the basketball side of things, because at least at the time of the recording of this podcast, Grant Nelson is officially in Arkansas. He's visiting. I think that there's reasons to be excited about that because he is a really good player. We talked a little bit about it on the last podcast as far as him just being down to Arkansas and Alabama and his, final couple of visits that he's doing. And the benefit for Arkansas, at least, is that they do get Grant Nelson in the final phase of the visits. Like, they get him to be able to look at and say, all right, so what's Alabama doing for you? Here's what we can do for you. Because the offers, I'm sure, is already on the table from Alabama. So all Arkansas has to do is match it, one-up it, whatever they need to do. And hopefully that'll be enough to secure Grant Nelson. Now, I went into how important it is just to get him because you don't want him to go to Alabama. In fact, this would be a huge victory for Arkansas if they were able to pull this off. And one of the things that I really laugh about is always about the aspect of, Bama just trying to make sure that everyone thinks that they're a blue blood program. And also the fact that on social media, they are completely and totally, absolutely insane and stupid and dumb. And they're not really a great basketball program. Fan base, my opinion only, though. I'm sure they'll have plenty of disagreements there. But I'm really wanting Grant Nelson to come to Arkansas just so I don't have to hear from Alabama basketball fans, quote unquote, because he ends up going there instead of Arkansas. So it comes down to those two schools. And as we talked about it yesterday, it had to be this way. It had to be between Arkansas and Alabama. But some question got posed to me actually on YouTube about the impact that he would have and what does he do for Arkansas immediately, and what could we kind of see from Arkansas when he would join the team and the role that he would play and how it all fit out. Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can look at this. And I'm sure that there's been a lot of ways that you've looked at it too. But to me, I believe that, and I've said this before, that regardless if Arkansas gets Grant Nelson, this is still going to be the most talented team that Eric Musselman has ever had at Arkansas, overall across the board. You have a bunch of high-quality transfers. You have guys that are coming back that are crucial, like Trevin Brazile, as well as Devo Davis. You have experienced guys also coming back, role players like Mekhi Mitchell. And you also have Jalen Graham. Like, if you really look at it, before Trevin Brazile got hurt, you have 3 starters returning from this past year's team. Isn't that insane? You think about the massive turnover that Arkansas's had. But if you really look at it in the basics, like Devo was a starter last year. Trevin Brazile, up until he got hurt, was a starter all year. And then you have Mekhi Mitchell, who started majority of the year, if not the entire year. So you basically have 3 starters back. You're adding in a lot of experienced guys out of the portal, and you're trying to make it work to where you can put together enough pieces to where you can take that next step as a program. Well, to me, with what Arkansas has right now, I still believe they're just as good of a team to where they can be one of the best teams in the SEC. They can be a team that can have a lot of great wins. They can be a team that can be built for postseason and road teams and all of that. Like, they're a team that'll be good enough to make it to the second weekend once again. They will be. Now, as we know, in the NCAA tournament, anything can happen, but considering Arkansas has made it to 3 straight Sweet 16s and 2 of the last 3 years made it to the Elite Eight. I think it's safe to say that as long as Eric Musselman's the coach, and as long as he has a team of guys that have talent, they are going to be in the running to making a run in postseason. That's just the way it is. And I believe they have that right now. They have it right now with the team that is on campus. And, we haven't even gone into Bayfall and all the rumors speculating around him. He hasn't made it to campus. At least we haven't seen him on campus just yet. Don't have any reason to believe yet that he's not going to be. I don't know exactly what the issue is or if there is even an issue, but I'm just going off of what we know now. And so he'll be on campus. You'll have Leighton Blocker on campus. And you just got a good squad, a good amount of players, a good team that is going to address a lot of needs because you do have some size. You have some really elite guard play defensively. You got guys that can shoot the ball a lot better. You got guys that can score at a pretty high clip. You got a distributor in Keon Minifield that will be able to provide a spark. You got Trevin Brazil, who's great at everything across the board. You got Devo Davis, as we know. Like, you just have so many different pieces and so many different players that will be able to make a major impact that it's hard for me to believe that this team will not be one of those teams in the running to not only just be great in the SEC, one of the top teams in the SEC, but also once you get to the NCAA tournament, be built for a run there too. It's about matchups and everything, but you got to trust in Muss and what he's been able to do, especially knocking off 2 number 1 seeds over the past 2 years. So that being said, if you add Grant Nelson into the mix, if Arkansas is able to get him and he ends up being a part of this team, it really, really, really makes it difficult for Arkansas not to be a lot of people's pick to win the SEC, to be the best team in the SEC, and also for fans not to start thinking that this is going to be another really great and special season, but one that could even put you over the top. Because let's be honest, what's the one thing that Arkansas has been missing with these Eric Musselman teams? Now, you could say like one particular type of player, or you could say, oh, is the size here? But really what it came down to for me is shooting. Like, you have not had a whole lot of great shooters on Arkansas' team. I was talking to a buddy about this the other day. If you broke down, who would you think would be the best shooters that Eric Musselman's had that he actually brought on campus? So I'm not talking about Mason Jones or Isaiah Joe, because those guys were brought in by Mike Anderson, but guys that actually were brought in by Eric Musselman. You're talking about Moses Moody, Stanley Amude. I mean, JD Notte was solid, but he was a volume shooter. So you just really haven't had those guys, those guys that can just go out there and make a basket from anywhere on the court. Or if you did have them, they got hurt or weren't playing a lot of time of the season. Well, now you don't have to worry about that, because I believe that this year you got the offense to replicate that and then to make up for it. If you have Grant Nelson and Trevin Brazil down on the court together, that is offensive firepower. I mean, those are 2 dudes that are capable of going for 20-plus points on any given night. And they do it in different ways. They can beat you in different ways. They can take off the dribble in different ways. They can hit threes if they need to. Like, they got it going on, and they have so much offensive prowess that is going to be a really tough thing to defeat. And same thing with, you got Khalil Battle, who is an offensive juggernaut coming from Temple. Devo Davis each and every year has gotten better offensively, especially in his three-point shooting. And like, those are just the guys that you feel like immediately once they get on the court, they're going to be great, and they're going to be able to add some things into the mix. And even Jalen Graham, as much as sometimes he struggled defensively, you think that he'll only get better defensively because his offensive game is really solid. So you have a lot of offensive pieces there. Not to say that you'll have great shooters this year, because you feel like every year it's like, oh, they've improved the shooting. Have they really? Like, it's something you have to see it before you start to believe it. But I think just offensively, given, they're better. And defense is going to happen no matter what, because as long as Eric Musselman's the coach, his teams are going to play great defense. It's kind of like Sam Pittman in the offensive line. It's like, as long as you have Sam Pittman as your head coach, you know offensive line is going to be good. Same thing when it comes to defense on the basketball team. As long as Eric Musselman's your coach, you're going to have good defense. Now, it's not to say that every player will be elite defenders, and it's not to say that you won't have breakdowns here and there, but with experienced players, great defensive experienced guys like Tremont Mark, who was great at Houston defensively, and you throw in, of course, Devo Davis and how great he's been, and Trevin Brazil, who was really good too. It'll all come together and all be there. There's not really going to be a weakness on paper that this team is going to have next year, assuming Grant Nelson comes to Arkansas. There's really not going to be. And you're going to have depth. You're going to have quality dudes. And this is a team I think that Eric Musselman, it feels so good about and is really excited about. And I have talked to various people, not only here in Arkansas, but talking to national recruiting people that have covered college basketball recruiting or transfer portals or whatever across the board. And I've asked them all the same question. If Grant Nelson comes in, is this the most talented team that Eric Musselman's ever had at Arkansas? And each and every one of them have said the same thing. It's the most talented roster, even if Grant Nelson doesn't come to Arkansas. But if Grant Nelson does, that puts Arkansas into a new category, into a level of talent that really will be tough to counter when it comes to all the other teams in college basketball. And as I've also heard from other people too, they believe Eric Musselman is a much better coach than Nate Oates. They just see it in March, and they see the development, and they see all that, which, you're going to have maybe 4 guys drafted this year in the NBA draft from Arkansas. That's something to really put a feather in your cap. It's all kind of coming together, and all really looks good for Arkansas. So the point is, I think Grant Nelson's the final key piece for Eric Musselman to take that next step. So let's just hope he ends up coming to Arkansas, right? Because I can't wait to do a podcast on that and really dive into it and really break it down there as well. We'll talk a little football here in just a second, but folks, I got to tell you about Birddogs. Listen, Birddogs, these shorts, they're next level. I've never had anything like them because we're all about way things fit, right? Because as soon as you get something that fits a certain way, you never want to get rid of it. You never want to change brands or anything like that. And I'll admit, when I got the Birddogs, I was kind of like confused by it. I was like, how does this work? How do you have a pair of shorts that look like they're khaki shorts, but they feel like they're jersey shorts, and they fit you like they're supposed to be like almost like pajamas? Like it's a weird vibe, but man, once you try them on, you see what it's all about. You're like, it's the most incredible, most comfortable pair of shorts that I've ever worn, and I'm not kidding about that. You need to try it out. They fit so much better than all the other shorts that you're ever going to have, and you can use them for a lot of different things too. But one of the best things about it is they have the anti-stink, sweating, wicking fabric. Keeps you cool and dry all day long. That's a big selling point, especially during the summertime when it's warm outside. So check it out today by going to birddogs.com, enter in /LockedOnCollege, and if you enter in promo code LockedOnCollege, you get a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com /LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. I promise you that.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. College football is ever-changing, and we've known that that's kind of the next big thing that people are waiting on for Arkansas football. And SEC Media Days will be here before we know it in July. So a lot of excitement surrounding all of it. And I thought that this was a really fascinating thing, though, with Media Days on the horizon, and even some coaches going up to Washington, D.C. to talk about NIL and how it needs to be fixed or changed or whatever it may be. But this is a great article written by the Associated Press writer Ralph Russo, who does a great job covering college football. And he wrote this, and Arkansas and Sam Pittman were kind of involved in it, but it cracked me up in a way. And I'm just going to read a few highlights from this article because, again, it was a great one. I encourage you all to go read it. But it's titled Portal Tampering Frustrates SEC Coaches, but a few ideas on how to stop it. So essentially, tampering's going on. Coaches are sick and tired of it, but they got to figure out a way to stop it, but they can't because there's really not a good way. So in this article, you have Shane Beamer, South Carolina coach. He says that it was strange based on conversations I've had with guys 2 or 3 days before they went into the portal. It's interesting how things happen. He says that kind of talked about how that just, you think you got them and then they're gone. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt says the chaos we're experiencing is the result of pulling back on regulations. So he had a lot to say about it too. Jimbo Fisher at A&M says the NFL deals with it, don't they? Talking about tampering. Major League Baseball deals with it. That's something I wish you could, because I think that is an issue. I think it is a big issue, and it's unfair to different levels of schools. If they get caught, there should be severe penalties. That's what Jimbo Fisher said. Shane Beamer also talked about rumors being one thing, but proof being another thing in the tampering idea behind it. Kirby Smart had something to say about it, where he says, so look, if kids are exploring to leave, it's really hard to police. Ask the NCAA. The kid goes to his trainer or high school coach, well, in our program, and we have people talking to those trainers, and high school coaches, word of mouth spreads that a guy's not happy and he's looking. Next thing you know, he's in the portal. He's already got somewhere he wants to go. So that's Kirby Smart. You also have Greg Sankey talking about. He says some of the behaviors that really raise questions about tampering and the use of NIL, those seem to happen later as the portal drags on, though not exclusively. And then Sam Pittman from Arkansas says he called coaches he believes have tampered with players on his roster. He says, however, once you make a call, it's already too late because the kid is already gone, is what Pittman said. And then you had some other people like Pat Narduzzi, who we know from Pitt, who's made some comments about it, and some others as well. But anyways, it was really fascinating just to kind of hear coaches talking about it. And that was just in the SEC, and that's just from that one article. Because we know other coaches have talked about tampering and the problems that arise from. I know that dork Eli Drinkwitz has talked about it up in Missouri too. So like all these coaches are coming out against it and talking about it. But what makes me laugh and what makes it funny is I'm like, okay, guys, if all of y'all are against this and all of y'all are saying the tampering's got to stop, there's a problem, then who's tampering? You are all talking about how it's a major issue and you get tired of it happening to your team. Folks, somebody's tampering. You can't all just be like, well, we're not tampering. I mean, but now there's tampering going on, but it ain't here. And everyone's like, well, it ain't here either. Yeah, it's a problem over here, but we're not doing it. Somebody's tampering, okay? And you know what I get sick and tired of when it comes to this tampering thing? If you have proof, provide it. And if you can't provide it, then I agree with actually what Jimbo Fisher said. The penalties for tampering, if you have proof of it and if you're able to actually provide evidence of it, should be to the fullest extent. Like, I feel like if you end up tampering as a coach or as a team or if there's a booster or whoever's involved, that particular person needs to be banished, needs to have some sort of like, I'm talking about like getting jail time even. I'm fine with that. Some sort of severe thing that'll really cause people to not do it as much or not to get caught. Not to say it won't still go on, but there needs to be something severe and drastic. If a coach is caught doing it, they are banished from college football for the rest of their life. I'm fine with that, if that would get people to stop doing it. But the problem is that so many times we hear coaches talk about tampering and it's going on. Okay, if it is, say who it is. We saw these cryptic tweets so many times of people saying, oh, it's going, yeah, I got a coach that tampered with one of my players. Oh, yeah, who was it? No, I'm not going to say. Why not? Why aren't you going to say? If you're bold enough to go out and talk about it, you should be bold enough to be able to say who it is. All right, enough with this like saving stuff. If you see it or if you hear about it or if you have some sort of proof, okay, go to the NCAA if you want, but I'd go public with it. Like if I found out that somebody was tampering with one of my players, and again, I had evidence of it, or if that player came to me and said, hey, coach, so-and-so has been talking to me. I'm like, all right, let's go out. I'm going to tweet about this, or I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put out a message. I'm going to do a press conference. I'm going to answer questions on it. I'm going to call those people out because that's the way you get some traction and you put some pressure on people. But this idea of just like everyone's against tampering, but yet somebody has to be tampering. Like, is it just the collectives? Is it the boosters? I don't know, but I don't know. I just think it's so funny when it's like you can't say anything about it, but it's going on. It's not going to say how or who or where or what or how, whatever. But I don't know. Still cracks me up. We'll talk a little bit about basketball, and something I saw was very interesting from a CBS Sports article about Arkansas being box office. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned here on the other side of the break, the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Razorback Basketball, as we were just talking about with Grant Nelson and everything, is really cool and great and fine and great and wonderful. But I thought that this was an interesting little piece that maybe people don't really know about. At least I didn't realize it. And it was come from CBS Sports. Now, for those of you who may not know, Gonzaga and UConn are two teams and two schools that are being connected with the Big 12. That maybe the Big 12 is going to be pursuing them because they believe that going in and getting big basketball brands like those particular schools could really help them out, which I totally agree with. I think it'd be a smart move by the Big 12. But either way, CBS Sports was writing about this and talking about Gonzaga and where they're at. And there's this thing that's Jeff Nelson, who apparently is the president of Navigate. which is a respected Chicago-based consulting firm used by several conferences to aid in the realignment efforts over the years. Navigate is presently working with Gonzaga about the possible move to the Big 12 or the Pac-12. Now, this Navigate system that he has, and apparently it's very, it has a lot of studies put into it and a lot of numbers put into it. It evaluated how the nation's top basketball programs ranked against power conference opponents in regular season play over the last 3 years with their metrical called TV Power. So I'll repeat that. It's evaluated on the nation's top basketball programs ranked against power conference opponents in regular season play over the last 3 years. TV Power, box office, teams that where it drives people to watch and does it in a major way. Now, there's a top 10 list that was released as far as which schools are the ones that have the most people watching it or checking it out and everything. Now, I thought this was pretty fascinating. Duke's number 1. No surprise there. Kentucky's number 2. No surprise. North Carolina, number 3. No surprise. And Kansas, number 4. No surprise. Gonzaga comes in at number 5. Ohio State at number 6. Michigan at number 7. And Michigan State at number 8. So you're talking about, ones that can't be or shouldn't be too surprising, not only with high-quality basketball programs, but huge fan bases to go along with them. But number 9 is Arkansas. Arkansas. You're talking about being listed in those programs right there. Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, Kansas, Gonzaga, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State. Arkansas is right there in the mix as being the second highest SEC team in all of the country that is TV power, that is box office, where if they're on TV and they're playing a game against a quality opponent, people are watching. It drives people to them. And I just love that stat because if you ever wanted to know how people feel about Arkansas and about the program, and, am I going to say it's a blue-blooded program? That's up to debate. I don't think I would, but I could hear arguments for it. But they're right there on the cusp. They're right there on the mix. They're right there, at least in the picture. Yeah, that's a proof of it right there. TV drives things, and we know it drives money. And anytime you have the Arkansas Razorbacks on in basketball, at least according to Navigate, they are a top 10 program when it comes to TV power rankings. That says something, and that's worth something, and that's amazing that Arkansas's had that over the past 3 years. So either way, thought it was an interesting stat. Do whatever you want with it. Does it mean anything? Don't know, but it's still pretty cool to know that Arkansas still gets a lot of people to watch and gets a lot of eyeballs on the TV. Appreciate everybody listening into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNabors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.